Awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much for hopping on. I know you're super busy, so I appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your schedule just to kind of hop on for a little bit.
Yeah, no, yeah, I appreciate you asking. Yeah, how you doing?
Good, good. Just in the middle of spring season right now. So it's kind of crazy with all that stuff going on. So how about yourself?
Yeah, we're just same. We're in the middle of our spring season, and yeah, our 15s they went to Egypt just recently, and then they're actually going to Dubai in April, and then our 16s and 18s are getting ready for GA Cup down in at IMG. Yeah, it's that time of year.
Absolutely, absolutely. Definitely a lot going on. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but like I said, thank you so much for hopping on. We'll kind
yeah.
of get into it, but before we do, if you just kind of want to introduce yourself, you're somebody as a younger coach. I've kind of seen you from afar, and I've been like, wow, okay, like that's the standard. So if you kind of just want to talk about your experience and what you feel comfortable sharing, and then we'll kind of get into the questions.
Well, I mean, how much time do you got?
As much as you have.
um, all right. Well, my name is David Winter. I'm originally from South Florida, born and raised. Went to the University of Tampa, won a national championship in 1994. From there, went on to play in Major League Soccer for a number of years. Had more clubs than Tiger Woods, but spent the most time with the Columbus Crew. So it's kind of incredible a little bit just with coming full circle with never mind as a player, but now even as a coach. But yeah, kind of bounced around the league. Even just coaching. Lived in Austin, Texas for 10 years, and yeah, I was very fortunate. Got to work with Adrian Heath and Bobby Murphy and with the Aztecs. So it was, the Austin Aztecs then became Orlando City. Um, but yeah, been back in Ohio for the last 11 years, I believe. Again, like when you get to be my age, and being a goalkeeper, getting hit in the head as many times as we do, things become a little blurry, a little cloudy. But yeah, I've been back here. It's funny, even when I'm asked, how long have I been with the Crew? It's like, with the, pinching myself in that the league is 30 years, old now. Yeah, it's like full circle, but yeah, I've been back 6 years with the academy, and have kind of worn multiple hats even in my time back, whether first team, second team. So yeah, in a nutshell, I've been very fortunate, Calvin, to not only as a player but as a coach over the years. Like not only organizations, but people I've gotten to work with. But yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think, like you said, it's got to be pretty special to be able to have been a player, then transition over to the coaching side. It just probably makes it that much more meaningful, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, no, it's again, yes, I feel very blessed, very fortunate. Again, not only as a player, but yeah, now to help. And it's funny, like I'm sure even with you and coaching, it's I say it all the time, like where we're just a vehicle. These kids nowadays, I mean, they're driving the bus, and I have to kind of remind them, whether it's in IDP meetings or just in general. It's like it's yeah. So I feel very fortunate to yeah, now just be a vehicle.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, one of my first things that I kind of want to talk to you about that I've found pretty interesting, and I like to kind of like for myself see the differences, obviously, because every culture is different. But when you've been in multiple winning cultures, what are some of the things that as a player, as a coach, like what are those things that have stood out to you that you kind of compare to maybe other environments where you're like, oh, like that was something that we didn't have, and you're almost kind of like that's a direct correlation or something that you see is correlated with positive environment.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like again, you were, luckily kind of have an idea of like some of the questions and some of the things, and um, it's been great because it's like it's almost like like a walk down memory lane, and just like thinking back and um, but yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest thing, and I know it's it's a buzzword almost, and it's used quite frequently, and it's kind of funny. I was even thinking about it because my wife, she makes fun of me. She's like, yo, you everything's a cliche, and like even in college, like my nickname was the pun king, and but I feel like in a lot of ways, like a lot of those things are you know they're true to a certain degree. So like the to answer your question, like I think the biggest thing for me is it's about culture. So again, looking back on it, like whether it was just my upbringing in South Florida with some of the coaches that I had, um, and just even just like with the diversity of my teammates and friends, and so yeah, I look back on my club career, like I look back even in my high school, college, like even just with some of the more successful teams that I was a part of. I mean, again, like for me, it always the common denominator is culture. Um, and listen, sometimes too, like even if the culture is not great, like I think you can always take something. Again, all the goalkeepers always make fun of me too, like with the Dave, you and your silver linings. But I really believe I mean, you can always kind of find a positive, like even in negative experiences, and even sometimes like some cultures that maybe not the greatest, but again, outside of the culture, like the biggest thing for me as well is just the goalkeeper union. And it's interesting too, like even with some younger goalkeepers, like you ask like what does the goalkeeper union mean to you, and they kind of like some of them have no idea or concept, and because it's being a goalkeeper, it's an interesting place to be. It's a lot of times like we can be on our own island, and um, and that's the harsh reality too. Like only one of us can play. So and whether on a pro roster or a college environment, like sometimes you can have up to 4 or 5 goalkeepers within a group. So I think even nowadays, like where yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, we ultimately want to be the number one, and but the goalkeeper union, I think it's yes, competition is a healthy thing. It's what you want to day in day out strive for, but yeah, being the goalkeeper union, it's supporting the guy in front of you. It's also yeah, I mean, you could again, not to be redundant, but I think it's a healthy place and competition, and but yeah, I think those are the two biggest things that kind of just stand out for me. Like it's just culture, and then also just the goalkeeper union.
For sure, for sure. And I think as well, me being a former goalkeeper as well, I think it's probably one of the most interesting environments, the goalkeeper union, because I was fortunate enough to always be able to be with a group of goalkeepers that had the ability to push you, but then there was also that respect because it's like only
Yeah,
we know what we go through. Like we know
yeah.
what it's like to make a mistake. We know what it's like the training sessions, all this other stuff. So I definitely agree with you on that. It's definitely an interesting perspective.
Well, it's funny because like even back in the day, like in the MLS, like they used to even have like in the media, like quotes of the week, and I think I actually got quote of the week because at one point, even here in Columbus, like we had 4 goalkeepers on the roster, and it's when Brad Friedel came back, and so again, like we had a Canadian international, we had Bo Shani, myself, so at one point, like I was asked by the Columbus Dispatch, and they were like, "Well, how do you feel about this?" And I'm like, again, the silver lining was like, yeah, this is great. This is, we're almost like our own little fraternity. I even coined it. I said, it's like we're alpha beta keeper. So even with girls, and because I've had the fortune of coaching, men, women. Again, that's the way I've always kind of looked at it. It's like we're our own little fraternity and sorority, and we support each other, but we can also push each other, in a positive way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, yeah, I think that the balance is so important because one too much in one way is always it can turn out to have a different result. So one thing that I'm kind of interested to hear your opinion on, and it's something that I, as a younger coach or maybe a newer coach, is always hearing about. And so, what, in your opinion, how do you manage self guided discovery versus kind of correcting as a coach? Because I think that for me, I think both are very valuable, but I've always tried to go a little bit more the self guided way if I can do that. But that's obviously sometimes can be very difficult, especially with the different levels that you work with. So, what's your kind of opinion there?
Well, I think you kind of even alluded to it with what we were just talking about there. Like I think it's a balance. I think everything that we do it's a bit of a balance, and it's for me it's well, not always. It's a poor choice of words. In most instances too, it's situational. So I think. Yeah, I think there's a time that you maybe you intervene, and it's more telling them, and even potentially showing. And if I were to even expand on that, like one thing that I've recently and more, I almost like I think it's better sometimes to come from their peers.
Mm,
So depending on the number of in the group, and so I 100%, and it's almost like sometimes too, like just it's almost like feel, and I think that just comes from experience, and again, knowing the goalkeepers as well. So I think and look, we have the fortune of spending so much time with these guys. It's almost like, and I'm sure even in your college environment, it's like we probably spend more time with these players than their actually families do. So, you kind of get to know the kids, and what makes them tick, and what motivates them, what buttons to push. But with all that said, too, I think it's almost invaluable, like when because like even in the self-guided, it's like okay, from an attacking standpoint, what did you see? And then it's like then it's like you kind of from the lens of the attacker, and then it's like you kind of like flip the script with the for the goalkeepers, and it's like you get them to think about it. But I do think sometimes too, it's like you just it's you got to like get in there, and it's like, okay, this in this instance, you might want to try to do this. And so again, I think it's a balance.
also, yeah, and it's that I've been kind of like sometimes I wreck my brain going back and forth. Something that I feel like the more I think about it and like actually do, the better the balance comes, which is pretty nice. So one and then another question here, one of the last ones for you, but personally for me, one thing that last year I really tried to improve upon was giving goalkeepers like the working goalkeeper more roles throughout a rep or obviously the session, but more so
Mhm.
in one rep, and then as well having servers more engaged, so having multiple
Yeah.
actions.
Hmm.
So what's the key part for you and in your opinion of making that successful? Because I know personally I have had sessions where I've gone too many decisions and like you can see like okay I went a little too overboard here, and then you
Yeah.
can go the other way where it's like okay I kind of made this too simple and I could have added another step that was related to the game in terms of like that next action. So I,
Yeah.
what's your kind of opinion there?
Well, and to just kind of even with what we were talking about in the last segment, where um, again, it's I think it's interesting too, like where sometimes with the goalkeeper, they'll just flat out ask, like, "Well, coach, well, what did you think in this situation?" And I'll kind of pause and I'll think about it for a second, and I'll just, again, I'm not trying to be funny, but it's like, look, I know what I would do in that situation. I said, but most importantly, well, what did you think? So
Mm,
I think that also kind of ties into, the question that you're asking, like even within the training and just multiple servers and just multiple situations. And, again, I think, and look, it's ironic because, you know, I find the older I get as a goalkeeper coach, again, like when I was younger, I mean, I'm out there, serving every ball. I'm just like, even like, diving around and just, but like, the reality is, I think, because even just a few weeks ago, I had my left knee scoped because unfortunately, it's funny because I've had more injuries probably as a coach than as a player. But yeah, that's a separate topic of just, never mind with the amount of balls that we strike. But my whole point of rambling on with this is like, I think even part of your question, it's like, even as a goalkeeper coach, depending on, again, the numbers and just the topic or the necessity, we're so focused on just the striking of balls and just like, the task at hand. Again, personally, I find, having more goalkeepers in a session, never mind, it enables it to be more dynamic. Because even during COVID, it was interesting because the flavor of the month and the hot topic was the difference between, linear and nonlinear, training. And it was actually Fabianata, even with was U.S. Soccer, like, he did a bunch of papers and studies on the difference between, linear and not nonlinear, where, and again, even in schools of thought, it's where it's not one size fits all. And, so again, not to go down a rabbit hole here, Calvin, I think, even within training, um, you can recreate, you can simulate, whatever actions that you are trying to get out. And again, whether it's you're focusing more on a technical aspect, you're focusing more on a tactical aspect. But again, that's the beauty of all of this. It's just where, sometimes things can, and again, with it's the game, it's the game. So even though you're focusing on this, but then something else, comes up. And, but again, that's where, like, even just, it's for me too, it's like the goalkeeper, it's so much, it's mental, the mental part of the game, and being switched on. And ironically, yesterday we had our new mental performance coach, Ellie Nelson, and it was brilliant. She actually referred to it as like a mental gym. So as much as we want to talk about like technical, tactical, all this other stuff, but like, again, for me, at the next level it's the mentality part. So it's, how do goalkeepers deal with, making mistake, or, how do they deal with making, with adversity. So it's like what we, I guess, refer to as the intangibles. um, so I think all of it kind of comes into play with, whether it's in the training environment, whether it's, the game environment. Like, I feel all of this is just intertwined and connected. um, but again, back to your question, I think it's just, what are you really trying to get out of the session? What are you trying to get out for the goalkeepers? And again, that's where I think, even, when we talk about linear, nonlinear, it's, what specific needs also, you know, might that be, and again, depending on the day of the week, depending on, the opposition that you have coming up. So you can kind of just, again, curtail and tailor, certain things. And that's the beauty of this as well, is like, you kind of manipulate even the sessions to, first and foremost, for them to have success, but then also too, like, it for them to struggle a little bit and to, be challenged. And yeah, but for, again, not to be broad brush, but I think it's all encompassing, and it's all interconnected.
No, absolutely, absolutely. No, that's a very interesting perspective on that. So, yeah, no, lots to think about there. So last one here for you, that I'm pretty interested to see. So, in your opinion, I get asked this a lot, just as like just with goalkeepers I work with, and I always find it interesting, like listening to other podcasts and talking to other people. What would you say? You don't obviously you don't have to list everything, but and it'll look different for everybody. But in general, what would you say goalkeepers should be focusing on in season versus out of season, in terms of training? And I know that that's kind of broad. So if you want to think about it in a very general way, like that's okay. Because
Yeah,
I
it's
know it
funny
can be
because
tailored.
it's funny because even coming into this, because my wife was making fun of me because like I can be very, very long winded in some of the things I say and explain. And, um, and again, like we talk about rabbit holes, but actually this one, again, I had some time to think about it, like beforehand, even with you presenting some of the questions. This one's pretty simple. Again, we spend so much time with these guys. Um, so I think even one of the other ones was the difference between microcycles, macrocycles, and for us, we pretty much break it down into phases. We break it down into 6-week phases, and again, out of a 12-month year, we probably were looking at more of a 10-month season. We'll have a little bit of a break in December, and then we'll have a little bit of a break in the summer in July. So again, we spend so much time with these guys and just focus on so many different things. The time that that they have to themselves outside of just periodically checking in and just like, hey, how you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are on the beach somewhere, or like, just doing kid stuff, whether it's playing
Mm-hmm.
video games or, being with your friends or spending time with your family. Like, we obviously, have a sports science department. We've got, even our ATCs, like, so they have like programs, they have things like, even if they go into any break, like they're injured, so they have programs, they have protocols that they can all kind of do. But from my vantage point, and even now we've got another goalkeeper coach that we brought into the academy, Sam Keener. Yeah, their time really is their time. And again, outside of, like I said, like a periodic, like, hey, hope you guys are having a great summer or a great holiday. That's from my vantage point, that's kind of the way I look at it.
No, that's awesome. I think too, like especially on days where it feels like there's so much focused in youth development, where like these kids have to be kids, have to be humans, have to
Yeah.
go out and live, because that's also going to develop them on the athlete side as well, them
Yes.
becoming people and having experiences and stuff. So, but no, listen, that's pretty much it. So, like I said, I don't want to steal too much of your time because I know you're a
Yeah,
very
no,
busy
listen,
man. So,
listen, listen, Calvin. Again, I could talk about this stuff all day long. Again, that's the beauty of this too. Like even within, our organization and our goalkeeper union, which we, even in our, it's funny, like, so whether it's Phil Berger with the first team or Alex Blackburn with the second team, again, now saying like yeah, that's the why for me. And again, I could talk, till the cows come home about this, but no, like, and not to belabor the point, like even just with what you're saying, like at the end of the day, it's also, what kind of human beings these guys are, because yeah, we spend so much time with them and not only influence them with, hopefully how they are as goalkeepers and, but again, the biggest piece to all this too is like, at the end of the day, and I think even in this conversation, there's the theme of just yeah, it's a balance. It's but at the end of the day too, it's like what kind of human beings we are.
absolutely.
By the way, I see in the background. Are you a set goalkeeper guy yourself?
I am. Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. Small world. Eric Klanovsky, and it's funny. Like all three of our other goalkeeper coaches are always set as well. I'm the only guy that's with Royce, and
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, I saw the set goalkeeper gloves. So yeah, Eric. Eric Klanovsky, great guy. Um, but yeah, great gloves from what I hear.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, they are. I can't complain. Can't complain. And it's nice too because they're for me, they're made a little bit old school, which is nice because there's a lot of the new narrow ones. I'm like a little bit the wider fit, so it's nice. But yeah, no, listen, like I said, I really, really appreciate your time, and I wish
Of
you,
course.
the best of luck and everything else, and all the upcoming stuff, you guys. It sounds like you guys got a lot of exciting stuff going on. So
Yeah.
yeah, wish you the best of luck, and like
Yeah.
I
Of
said, thank you. So.
course. Anytime, man.
All
All
right.
right. Have a good one.
Thank you. You as well.